Hello and welcome back to the Mind of Opex. We're back at it again, baby. I'm gonna drink some of my corn syrup. High fructose. So, I said before in a previous video, I'm gonna make videos every day. So these daily videos are seriously happening. I'm just not able to upload every single one to YouTube because I have this issue where I just talk and talk and talk, and I don't stop myself. I can't just put everything into a little tiny detailed thing. It has to be long form. So yesterday I made an hour-long video. The day before I made a 2-hour-long video. Yeah, 2 hours long. I even knew it when I got 15 minutes in. I'm like, holy shit, I didn't get anywhere into this discussion. But today we're going to try to talk extremely fast. So definitely try to stay on point with me, because I'm not trying to make an hour-long video or whatever. And I want this to show up to YouTube. The reason why the other ones didn't show up to YouTube was because, well, my video format only goes about 30 to 40 minutes long and then stops. And so I'm going to have to merge my previous videos together, edit them, stuff like that, which will happen within this week. Within this week, those videos will show up and they won't be 2 hours long. I'm going to edit the fuck out of it where it's going to be pretty decent. Anyways, we're already a minute and a half into this video. Let's talk about what I want to talk about. So this one's another rather important one. I definitely got to talk about it. I've talked about this periodically on my channel. I want to talk about language. And of course, as a human being, we know that there's different types of languages just for our species. So this would be English, Dutch, whatever, right? We can go on forever. We got tons of tongue languages. All language is a form of communication. So you can call language a spoken language, but it's not necessarily. Because notice that I said a spoken language is English and stuff like that. It's a form of language, but there's many different forms of language. And as somebody that considers himself an empath, obviously there's a reason why I'm saying that. I'm not just saying it for weird reasons. I have the ability to feel what other people are feeling, to have direct understanding of somebody with them not even using spoken language or even sign language or any type of critical type of explanation, whether that be in any form of communication, really. And I can detect these things, right? And I want to tell you all the various forms of communications that I see anecdotally. So my evidence is that I'm able to see something or hear something or use one of my many senses to detect accurate information. Because all language is a form of communication. So we know that there's English, and it's our understanding of English. For example, if you're watching this video and don't have subtitles, you understand English in order to understand what I'm saying. Now, English itself, let's say written down, isn't everything, right? It's literally just a communication tool where we all have to define these words. We define the words in order to make a sentence. So if I say the sky is blue, well, if you're colorblind, you're not going to understand the concept of blue. So you're going to have your own interpretation of it, right? So English is one of these languages, spoken languages, that I use every day, and most people in the world use. It's the most spoken language in the world, I believe. Or at least it's the most widely known language, even though it's considered one of the harder languages. So if we're reading something written, right, you're not accurately communicating with that the reader as a writer. As a writer, you're going to try to accurately articulate your communication, your information, and communicate it the way that you deem possible with the various levels of differentials and variations through the English language. This could be the way you write something more poetic, right? There's many different ways to articulate something written down, but it's not as accurate as, let's say, person to person. So, like, if you're writing somebody a text, language is going to be an issue, right? So you're going to have to guess how they're interpreting the written language. And a lot of people don't understand this. Now, I made a video called Communicating, or something like that, communication. And ultimately, that's what language is. Language is communication. That's all it is. But what is the most accurate? It's totally not reading like reading written words. It's not the most accurate because you're guessing. And the problem when you're guessing is that you may take a text saying that, I fucking love you. You don't know if that person's being sarcastic, accurate, or whatever, but you're gonna guess, right? And a lot of times, if you're not intelligent enough to articulate the understanding correctly, or at least to the closest means, you're gonna take your own interpretation of these words, how you would describe it, right? So if somebody says, I fucking love you, well, just because you wouldn't be sarcastic about it, doesn't mean somebody else would. So then, it does not accurately define how it is communicated. The information changes through interpretation and perspective. So if there's perspective is that I fucking love you was a real thing, and the person's like for example, let's go with a text example. I say, hey, I'm not going to the concert tonight. Sorry, I can't make it. The other person says, I fucking love you. Well, you can interpret that how you want, but it might not be accurate. It could be, I fucking love you because you always fucking shit up. Or it could be, I fucking love you because I didn't really want to go to that concert anyways. For example. And through text messaging, you lose people, right? Especially people that don't truly understand your fabric or your soul or your identity, who you are, which is extremely difficult to understand because 99.9% of people don't know who they are. They are acting. Watch my video on Everyone is Pretending. I believe that was the name, probably a few months ago, which is a pretty accurate video when it comes to people portraying something that they are not essentially. A cop, once you're a cop, you got to play the role of a cop, right? You can't just play the role of a criminal. You got to play the role of a cop. So you pretend to be something that is out of your nature. Now, just because you're doing something doesn't mean that that's your nature. So, for example, think in your head right now. If I said a cop, how are you portraying that cop? Until I add accurate details about that cop, you have to come up with an interpretation of that cop. How do you see cops? It's like that brain teaser thing. Like, say the first thing that comes to your mind when I say this word. So if I say cop, are you going to think to yourself, killer? Are you going to think to yourself, a thief? Are you going to say to yourself, protector? Like, there's a million words that can come to your mind, and use this as an idea of why text, any type of text, like, for example, English language text. This could be a book, this could be a text message, this could be a blog on the internet, whatever. But the point is, how you interpret that is going to be your interpretation, and the writer's job is to articulate that communication skill. So instead of just saying a cop, like if you got a text message saying, oh, there's a cop here, well, you might be like, oh shit, I gotta be careful, or you might interpret it another way, like, hey, there's a cop here, so I'm gonna feel safe, whatever, right? So there's many ways to determine something if it's not accurately articulated to the person. So there's various forms of communication. Shit, I'm already 10 minutes into this. I'm only talking about written shit. This might be a long video, sorry guys. So, there's this idea that, and I've heard this countless times, when you think, let's say you're an English speaker, and that's your only language of origin, or your native tongue, is English, right? Why is it that you think in English? Well, you have to put things into words in order to understand it. Now, the question is, how do deaf people think, in what language. Because when we're thinking in language. We're thinking in things of language. Right? So English would be your native tongue. That's how you were able to figure out something through thought. Or how things are going to play out. Like, you can see pictures and stuff too. Like, you can create movies in your head. And that all that is information. This is actually the key to information. And I think I kind of like split the... shouldn't have told you guys that this early, because I was going to talk about that later in a different video. But the truth is, it's your key to success how you mind map. And how you communicate or how you think of things is through, let's say, English. Well, deaf people, what language do they think in? Or let's say, you know, somebody who's mute, or somebody that never learned an English language, or like, let's say, dogs. How do they think? Do they think without language? No. They use a form of language in order to think. And yes, dogs think too. They have the same parts of their brain just like humans. Might not be as conscious, might not be as big parts in the brain as humans, because ours is, for our size, our brains are huge for our size. So we have different forms of communication, different levels, rather, of communication. And it changes the dynamic. But however, what language is a dog thinking? Well, dogs will think in how that they process things. So just, let's go to a cat, right? You put something in front of a cat reacts different, right? It's a form of nature through in which the animal's genetics were programmed, right? So it repeats information and it changes. But the cat can actively think differently. So if you put a string in front of a cat, or a laser pointer or something like that, it might try to attack it as if it was a mouse's tail, or if it was a fly on the wall. And it will go after it because it may be a food source. So its predatory mind reacts in a predatory motion. So it's a form of communication. This information that I see in the Matrix is how I decipher what that information is. So what kind of communication is that? You think that by playing with your cat, it's playing for you, it's also playing for the cat. Because you both are increasing your endorphins. You're both getting some entertainment value out of it. You both are having some sort of rush, right? You and your cat playing with a bird on a string, or a mouse on a string, or whatever, right? You are effectively communicating with that conscious animal. The animal is thinking. It is communicating. Now, it's the same thing when you play with your dog. Let's go for a run, buddy. And you take your dog outside, or to a park, or whatever you got to do, and you go running your dog. Your dog's loving it, right? But the dog might not necessarily love it because the dog's outside. It's just that it's doing something perhaps with you, right? So there's a form of bond that happens without a spoken language. So, I mean, you could say, run, let's go for a run, and that dog might have that trigger word that changes, which changes like their perception, or what's going to happen, or adds excitement, and the dog knows run means go to park. Or even if you say, let's go to the park, dog's already running out to your car, right? So we are effectively able to communicate on many different tangents. One of those being just bonding. Just being around each other, picking up vibrations and frequency, right? Bill Burr did I know I do this a lot, where I talk about comedians, but I love comedy. I think it's, don't have to dive into that, this video will take forever. Bill Burr had a bit where he was talking about his pit bull. He had a pit bull, and, you know, a big pit bull, and he would walk it down the street. And what Bill Burr would essentially do was walking around the street, it would get all hyped up, and when he came home, he would wrestle the dog at the top and kind of like spark an aggressive area of the brain of the dog. And the dog got some excitement off of the aggressiveness, and the dog in turn would be aggressive. So the dog's building up on Bill Burr's anger, pretty essentially. So when Bill Burr gets angry and goes, "Oh, fuck." Dog's like, "Yeah, oh, fuck." You know, like kind of that bondage communication. Like that's who we are. Now, I've raised animals, plenty of animals in the past, dogs, cats, etc. And it seems, and there's a theory out there, that the animals become that in which the owner is, or at least similar in the frequency. Let's say if you're a lazy person, your animal's going to be a lazy animal. And essentially, that's true, because what you're doing is communicating, saying this is who we are. So it's the same way as parents raising kids. Kids are bound to be the same as the parents, as to which, for example, if you're beating your kid's gonna probably attack other kids at school. You know, so that goes on to the next generation. Essentially environmental, not genetic. Now, of course, that plays a role too, but that's not what I'm talking about. Essentially environment. So if you're putting your dog into an environment, clearly you don't share the same genetics. However, you're effectively communicating information in which is acceptable. So the dog might shit inside, and you might scold that dog. The dog at first may not understand, but knows that, hey, you're angry, and I don't know why you keep shoving my face in the shit. And it's like, yeah, why are you putting my face in my shit? This is fucked up. Or whatever. And then after a while, the dog will come to conclusions that there is an effective communication going on, that the human says, no, you don't shit in the house. Eventually that will trigger, right? This is language. We are speaking language directly through many different factions. More than just spoken language, more than just gestures. It's just a combination of tons of different things. Frequency, gestures, it could be language, it could be logic, especially in our consciousness. As humans, we have a higher degree and higher dynamic in terms of consciousness. So we are able to effectively communicate a lot better using words. Words, not alone, like I said when texting, words alone is interpreted differently. Everyone has a different interpretation of this. It might not be accurate from the writer's perspective to the readers. So we use other things. Frequency. We use tone, tonality. We use many different aspects. I talk with my hands. Now, this might be an old school Italian thing, but I've always talked with my hands. And the reason why I talk with my hands is because I'm feeling something and I want it to be expressed. Even though, despite, dude, put both hands on the wheel from you guys, right? But I'm always in a safe spot. I don't make videos unless there's no one on the road. Anyways, we use other things in addition to our spoken language in order to articulate something to the person. Right? So it's very, very rare, and it does happen, and it usually has a difference between IQ or understanding of definitions in language. But it's very rare where somebody can talk to somebody face to face, knowing the same language, and having two different understandings of that language, right? Could be trigger words, right? Like some words can be triggered differently. Like if I said libtard, right? That's just what I always say. I always call liberals libtards. I'll say it to their face. I'll say conservatives something else, right? And, you know, I'm not Democrat or Republican. I'm totally anti. I stay strict with my morals. And both of them are direct violation against, you know, any type of moral justice. Both of them are wrong. You know, both of them steal from you, etc. Anyways. But if I called somebody a libtard or a snowflake, I'm generally not trying to be rude. Generally. And you can tell by my communication, right? But if I wrote it out, like I'm sure there's some liberals that watch my videos that understand, hey, I don't hate you. I just don't like liberals in terms of the ideology because it's cancer. And, you know, I like people, you know? So if I explain to somebody one-on-one, show how sincere I am, and I use a word like fuck or libtard, right? To most people, that'd be a trigger, like, oh my God, they used the word that I don't like, and they would be triggered. right? So essentially, using your own perspective and using your own understanding of definitions, you can change what the person who's trying to actually communicate effectively with you, change what they are saying in your mind. Like, you will accept what they have said in a different way. For example, if I said, man, these fucking libtards are totally screwing up everything. I wish everyone was just morally consistent. Some people would be like, holy fuck, I can't believe you just said that, right? And then others would be like, well, he's not like rude. He's just using words to describe something, and he's very sincere, and he seems like a good person, right? Which should be more accurate. So I'm not saying you should go start using this to your advantage. Don't do that where you're a fucking snowflake, you're a fucking idiot, you know, like in a nice way. It doesn't work like that. But you can be more sincere, especially as an empath, and you can feel somebody's true objective. So that effective communication was multi-leveled, multi-dimensional. It depends on your consciousness, which of course, even from dog to dog to human, there's different levels of IQ and consciousness and awareness when it comes to different people. We're all different, right? We're just effectively in the same, we're all in this thing together, right? We're all stuck on planet Earth. All is in whoever's watching this video, unless this is going intergalactic or something. Interstellar communication. Look, how I'm communicating with you right now, I'm not even near you, but I'm using information and the technology and all the things that are effective. It all boils down to consciousness. So there's different levels of consciousness where obviously a dog isn't going to be contacting another dog on the phone, at least in 2018, right? Who knows in 2090 or something, right? If they can speed up a dog's evolution to higher consciousness. Who knows? But in today's realm, communication is various. And it's still based on interpretation, right? So I've seen dogs and cats and all different types of animals go up to another dog or cat or whatever animal, and one might want to play, right? And the other one's like, hell no, you know, or to the other animal. And the other animal's like, and it's that animal's interpretation of how they want to feel with it. It's like the same thing when, you know, you're human and a bear finds you, right? Let's say a black bear finds you, and essentially the black bear is confused, like, what do I do with this? He's big, but I'm pretty confident I can take him. What's going on? And then if you show that you're confident and be like, you know, and you're the aggressor, it's like, whoa, this being has the balls and not scared to come at me. Well, he must know something I don't. So that's effective communication just by like, to a black bear. Like, oh, he might know something I don't. Until, you know, he calls your bluff, right? So it depends on what kind of frequency you're giving out to effectively communicate to that other animal. Because the animal is going to try to see through your bluff. Like, whoa, all right, he didn't hit me, he didn't attack me, he didn't bite me or anything like that. Let's give this a second. Is he really that scary? Does he really have something? How is he going to hurt me? You know, it's just a human. You know, look at those puny muscles. And the bear might be just straight up like, let's wait this out. Or could be like, whoa, like, I'm not fucking with whatever that is. And skedaddle. Might stick around, might skedaddle, right? So how you communicate changes through perspective. You can try to communicate as effectively as possible through all different forms of language, but it might be confusing to those of lower consciousness, right? So it's like the same thing. Like, a dog might know some English words. You can teach the dog English words, and you can effectively communicate. Like, you might say to your friend, hey, I went for a run today. Your dog might be like, oh shit, we're going for a run, right? The dog knows what run means, but it doesn't know how it was portrayed in detail. Same thing when it comes to, like I said earlier, when I said the word cop. How do you feel about cop? say the first word that comes to your mind or your first sentence that comes to mind when you think of a cop. Some of you would be like, fuck that cop. You know, that's an evil motherfucker that's on a power trip. Others might be like, wow, I'm so, I support the troops, whatever blue ribbon's going on, and stuff like that might come to your head, right? Effectively, two different sides of the spectrum, but we have the same word, cop. We can both look up the definition of cop, but it's going to still change through perspective. That's why when you're trying to argue with someone, properly, not like a dick and not yelling, not that kind of argument, but when you're truly trying to... Sorry, I just ate right before this video, so I got a little bit of burpee going on, and my high fructose corn syrup. Oh man, it's so disgusting. I hate this shit. I just ran out of water. Anyways, effectively communicating requires understanding of the definition. So before an argument, let's just say there's a flat earth debate, right? One side's pro flat earth, the other one's pro ball or pear shaped or whatever the globe model is. Globe model guy is going to be like, okay, what's your definition of a flat earth? Is it pancake shaped? Is it just a line and there's nothing under? How thick is your flat earth, right? Like, is it huge? Is it very thick? Is it just a tiny sliver? Is it just 10 miles? We got to define what you mean by flat earth. It can mean a whole variety of different things. But until we both engage and say this, can we both agree that this is what we're talking about? Until that happens, you cannot effectively communicate. And that's the biggest problem when it comes to an argument, right? So you can use the same words, you can read the same book, you can do the same research, you can have different types of language in your thoughts, but in order to interpret that, you must both, or at least every party that's included, understand what we are talking about, and that is through definition. Ah, shit, we're already 30 minutes into this. Now I gotta think of a way to close it instead of making this a 2-hour video. So there's many ways to communicate. Essentially, language is an important one. Body language, spoken language, frequency, tonality, energy. So if you said, I'm having a fucking bad day today, versus I'm having a fucking bad day today, there's two different interpretations to that perspective. Right? I'm having a fucking bad day today. I'm having a fucking bad day today. You have different energy, tonality, etc. Right? Saying the same words in the spoken language, but how it's deciphered is different. So to effectively communicate can be in any different variety of things. It can be tonality, it can be energy, it can be all different things. So when you actually look at and try to figure out what somebody else is saying, try to define that. So when you're having a Republican versus Democrat debate, define that in which you're talking about. Describe primary objectives. Describe these things so you can touch on those topics and do so effectively. Not only communicate effectively, but communicate properly. So effective would be like everyone understands what you're doing. Everyone understands the point that you're trying to come across. But properly would be putting it into a way that everyone's going to understand it, right? Something that is more standard. So a standard, effective way. So you would start off your argument or debate, let's say. This could be anything. This could be just talking to your wife or girlfriend or husband or whatever, a friend at work. It could be anything, right? Anybody, any situation. But before you discuss, you want to have a primary understanding before you just start yelling at each other. Because yelling at each other effectively communicated something that had nothing to do with the argument, right? Because if I'm Christian and you're a Muslim, Christian Muslim, and I'm trying to come up with the reasons and the logic and reason and evidence behind my argument, I'm not just going to start off by, you guys are... That's effectively the worst form of argument, because you don't get nothing done. All right? And what you tried to communicate wasn't effective, other than what you actually tried to instill in the other person. You tried to instill a feeling of, I hate your religion, you guys are evil, right? And if that's what you're doing, the other person's like, wait a minute, I'm not evil. You know, I think you guys are the evil one, and I had logic and reason to describe that in which that I wanted to say, right? So when you're having two sides of the spectrum trying to communicate, it's very rough. Same thing when it comes to a bear that doesn't speak English versus a human that speaks English, right? And that's the primary form of communication for each animal. Is going to be totally different. Totally different. So you would have to stoop to their level of consciousness or their understanding of the world. And that's kind of what most people do subconsciously. So like if you're talking to a baby, right, you're like, oh, look at the baby, right? And you're talking to a baby, you're talking to them like you got baby talk going on. But the baby isn't going to understand one way or the other. They're only understanding certain types of body language versus and energy and frequency and things of that nature, because they don't understand written, spoken type languages. They only understand, you know, like if you hate a baby, you're like, the baby's gonna cry and be like, you're scaring me, because that's the information that you wanted to interpret, or for the baby to interpret, or whatever you're trying to do that to. It's like 32 minutes. It's like a husband coming home from work and angry, right? Husband wants to articulate to the wife, I'm fucking angry, I'm fucking hungry, you know, and then try to get the wife being like on that level of understanding. However, you don't have to do that. There's other ways to do it instead of yelling at your wife, saying that you're hungry and you're tired and your back hurts or whatever, right? There's other ways to interpret that or to speak it. And one's a dickhead way, clearly trying to ruin someone's day. The other one could be like, hey, hon, I'm hurt, my back's hurt, I'm sorry. You know, I'm gonna go lay down for a little bit, I'm starving, you got food? You know, there is another form of communication. Now, one might not be as strong of a intimidator than as the other one. Like, one might force the wife to do something, but it's, you know, there's different ways of communication, tonality, all that shit. It's different forms of communication. Now, written on paper, one could be, I'm fucking hungry, I'm fucking tired, my back hurts. And one could be, I'm fucking hungry, I'm fucking tired, my back hurts. Right? On written paper, it's a whole different ballgame of communication. So we got to understand how to articulate different things, especially in communication. If you watch Jordan Peterson, right? I watch him, at least a lot of his interviews and stuff. I'm not going to be that idiot that says I agree with this and I don't agree with that. Fuck that. Everyone's going to disagree. But Jordan Peterson does that thing where he's talking to the enemy type deal, right? Like the liberals. Now, Jordan Peterson isn't pro-Republican or Trump or anything like that, right? He's against the two-party system. Right? So when he's talking to liberals and these Democrats and stuff, and he's trying to put together an argument, and these liberals don't have much of an argument of, you know, let's just say it's abortion, right? They're talking about abortion, and the liberals like, don't you want women to do what they want to do with their bodies and blah, blah, blah? And he just stays calm. He goes, yeah, I do want that. But that's not what we're doing here. We're killing babies. You know, we're killing people. You know, there's a huge difference between the two. And, he stays calm and he articulates what he has to say. And it makes him look like he knows what he's talking about more rather than, what the fuck? Something weird going on here. But before this turns off, and I have to start making a part 2 to this, I'm going to stop it right now and say communication is different. To effectively communicate, you're going to have to use a variety of different things to communicate and to understand. So to understand that communication takes another level as well. You're not going to get everything out of a text message. It's not going to happen. So before this turns off, have a good day. Stay tuned for more content. I got plenty more coming, and I'm going to have daily videos for you guys. So stay tuned for more of that content. OPEX, I'm out.